You wake to the sound of creaking timber and the distant crash of waves against the hull. The year is 1547, and you are Captain Eduardo Mendoza, master of the Spanish galleon Santa Esperanza. Your cabin rocks gently in the pre-dawn darkness, but the motion is wrong, too sharp, too irregular. Your experienced body recognizes the signs immediately. A storm is building somewhere beyond the horizon, and your ship of 130 souls is sailing directly toward it. The rough wool blanket scratches against your salt-crusted skin as you swing your legs over the edge of your narrow bunk. The cabin is barely larger than a horse stall, yet it represents the height of luxury aboard this floating wooden prison. Your feet find the cold deck planks, worn smooth by countless passages between your bunk and the small writing desk where you maintain the ship's log, that crucial document that might someday tell the world how you lived, how you died, and how you tried to bring your men home. The air in your cabin carries the perpetual dampness that has become the scent of your existence. Mold grows in the corners where condensation collects, creating black stains that spread like disease across the oak planking. The smell mingles with the odor of the tallow candle you burned too late into the night, calculating rations and plotting courses on charts that grow more inaccurate with each mile sailed into unknown waters. Your hands, permanently stained with tar and scarred from countless rope burns, reach for the leather jerkin hanging from a wooden peg driven into the cabin wall. The garment is stiff with dried salt spray and bears the accumulated stains of months at sea, blood from treating wounded men, grease from the eternal maintenance work that keeps a wooden ship afloat, and the yellow-brown marks of the small beer that serves as your primary beverage when fresh water runs low. As you dress in the darkness, muscle memory guides your movements through routines perfected over 15 years of maritime command. Your fingers find the small brass buttons without conscious thought. Your feet automatically adjust to the ship's movement as you pull on the heavy woolen stockings that provide some protection against the cold that penetrates even the best sea boots. The ritual of dressing becomes a meditation on survival, each piece of clothing a barrier against elements that would kill you within hours of exposure. The ship's bell strikes 4 times, 2 in the morning by the Spanish system of timekeeping that divides the night into watches. In 2 hours, the sun will begin its climb above the eastern horizon, but dawn feels like a distant promise when darkness seems absolute and the ship moves through water black as the depths of hell. You have learned to treasure these quiet moments before the day's survival begins in earnest, when the ship belongs to you alone and the weight of command feels momentarily bearable. Your cabin contains the accumulated treasures of a life spent sailing between worlds that exist at the mercy of wind and wave. A small wooden chest, secured with iron bands and a lock whose key never leaves your person, holds the charts that represent your most valuable possessions. These hand-drawn maps, copied from originals created by Portuguese navigators who died keeping their secrets, show coastlines, currents, and hazards that could mean the difference between finding safe harbor and driving your ship onto rocks that would tear her hull apart in minutes. The process of studying these charts in candlelight has become a nightly ritual that borders on obsession. Your finger traces routes across paper that bears the stains of previous voyages, wine spills from celebrations of successful landfalls, blood drops from wounds suffered during battles with pirates, water damage from storms that nearly sent you to the bottom. Each mark tells a story of survival, and each successful voyage adds to your reputation as a captain who can bring ships home when others fail. But reputation means little when facing the Atlantic Ocean in a wooden vessel that represents the pinnacle of 16th century maritime technology yet remains fundamentally vulnerable to forces beyond human control. Your ship, built in the shipyards of Cadiz by master craftsmen who understand the subtle relationships between wood, wind, and water, stretches 120 feet from bow to stern and carries 32 cannons that provide both offensive capability and the weight that keeps her stable in heavy seas. The Santa Esperanza represents more than transportation. She is a floating city that must function independently for months at a time while crossing oceans that have claimed thousands of vessels and tens of thousands of lives. Every timber in her construction was selected for specific properties: oak for strength, pine for flexibility, cedar for resistance to rot and boring insects. The hull planking, caulked with oakum and pitch, creates a barrier between your men and the sea that wants to claim them, but this barrier requires constant maintenance and vigilance to remain effective. The ship's company reflects the international nature of 16th century maritime enterprise. Your crew includes Spaniards from Andalusia and Castile, Portuguese sailors whose knowledge of African waters proves invaluable, Italian gunners whose expertise with artillery provides security against pirates and enemy vessels, and even a few English and Dutch sailors whose skills outweigh the political complications of their presence on a Spanish ship. Each man brings specialized knowledge essential for survival, but cultural differences and language barriers create tensions that must be carefully managed to prevent conflicts that could destroy crew cohesion. The hierarchy aboard ship represents a rigid social structure designed to maintain discipline and efficiency under conditions that test human endurance to its limits. Below you in the chain of command stands Miguel Santos, your first mate, a man whose 30 years of sea experience include survival of 2 shipwrecks and a pirate attack that left him with a scar across his left cheek and an intimate understanding of how quickly maritime situations can turn deadly. His knowledge of seamanship complements your navigational skills, creating a partnership that has successfully completed 7 voyages despite storms, equipment failures, and human conflicts that have defeated other captains. Your second mate, Fernando Lopez, brings youth and energy to balance the experience of older crew members. At 25, he represents the new generation of Spanish mariners who combine traditional seamanship with innovations in navigation and ship handling that promise to make ocean voyaging less deadly than it has been for previous generations. His ability to read weather signs and predict storm behavior has already saved the ship twice during your current voyage, demonstrating the kind of environmental knowledge that separates successful sailors from those who perish at sea. The ship's bosun, Carlos Vega, oversees the daily work that keeps a wooden vessel seaworthy in the hostile marine environment. His responsibilities include managing the complex rigging that controls the ship's sails, supervising the constant maintenance work required to prevent rot and structural failure, and enforcing the discipline necessary to coordinate the efforts of men whose cultural backgrounds and personal interests often conflict. His voice, trained to carry orders across the deck during storms, provides the communication link that transforms individual sailors into a functioning crew. Below the officers in rank but equally essential for survival are the skilled tradesmen whose expertise keeps the ship operational. The ship's carpenter, Juan Morales, possesses knowledge of wood joinery and repair techniques that can mean the difference between reaching port safely and sinking in the middle of the ocean. His tool chest contains specialized implements for every aspect of shipboard carpentry, adzes for shaping timber, augers for drilling holes, caulking tools for sealing hull seams against water penetration. His ability to assess structural damage and devise repairs using available materials has already proved crucial during encounters with rough weather that tested the ship's construction to its limits. The ship's cooper, responsible for maintaining the barrels that store water, wine, and preserved foods, represents another essential link in the survival chain. His skills in barrel construction and repair determine whether the crew has access to drinkable water and edible food during voyages that can last 6 months or more. A single failed barrel can mean the difference between adequate nutrition and starvation, making his work as crucial as that of the navigator who plots the ship's course. The gunner, an Italian named Giuseppe Bernadetti, brings expertise in artillery that provides both offensive and defensive capabilities essential for survival in waters where piracy and international conflict create constant threats. His knowledge encompasses not just the operation of cannons but the complex logistics of maintaining gunpowder in a damp environment, storing cannonballs to prevent them from shifting during rough weather, and training crew members in combat techniques that could save their lives during hostile encounters. Your ship carries a human cargo that extends beyond the professional crew to include passengers whose presence adds both opportunity and complexity to the voyage. Spanish colonists bound for the New World represent the economic justification for your expedition, but their lack of maritime experience makes them vulnerable to injury and illness while adding to the ship's consumption of water and food. Franciscan missionaries traveling to establish churches in colonial territories bring spiritual guidance that helps maintain morale during difficult passages, but their unfamiliarity with shipboard life requires constant attention to prevent accidents that could prove fatal. The financial passengers, merchants and minor nobles seeking fortune in colonial ventures, provide the funding that makes your voyage possible, but their expectations of comfort and safety often conflict with the harsh realities of ocean travel. Managing their complaints and fears while maintaining the ship's safety requires diplomatic skills that were never part of your maritime training, yet failure to handle these relationships effectively could result in political consequences that end your career. The daily routine that governs life aboard your ship reflects the eternal struggle between human needs and maritime survival requirements. The ship's bell marks time in 4-hour watches that divide the crew into shifts, ensuring that skilled hands are always available to handle emergencies while allowing exhausted men the rest necessary to maintain effectiveness. But sleep aboard ship is never restful. The constant motion, the noise of wind and wave, the periodic calls for all hands to handle sail changes or emergency repairs mean that true rest is a luxury rarely experienced during ocean crossings. The watch system creates a rhythm of life unlike anything experienced on land. Men who work the midnight to 4 a.m. watch develop the ability to function in complete darkness, reading wind and weather by sound and feel when visual cues disappear. Those assigned to morning watches learn to interpret the subtle changes in light and atmospheric pressure that announce approaching weather systems. Afternoon watch members become experts in sail handling during the variable winds that characterize daytime sailing. Each watch develops its own culture and expertise, but all must coordinate seamlessly when emergencies require the entire crew to work together. Your role as captain places you outside the normal watch rotation, making you available for emergencies while bearing the burden of constant responsibility for decisions that affect everyone's survival. Sleep comes in brief intervals snatched between crises, and even rest is interrupted by the need to monitor weather conditions, check navigation calculations, and assess the ship's condition. The weight of command means that you are never truly off duty, never completely free from the awareness that a single mistake could kill everyone under your command. The ship's daily routine begins before dawn with the inspection of rigging, sails, and hull for damage that might have occurred during the night. This examination requires systematic checking of hundreds of components, rope splices that could fail under load, sail seams that might tear in high winds, hull planking that shows signs of working loose in heavy seas. The process takes nearly an hour and must be completed before the day's sailing begins, but it represents insurance against failures that could prove catastrophic when the ship encounters challenging conditions. The morning inspection reveals the accumulated wear that characterizes life aboard a wooden sailing vessel. Rope, constantly stressed by wind pressure and ship movement, shows signs of fraying that require splicing or replacement. Sails, subjected to forces that would tear lesser materials apart, develop small tears that must be sewn before they expand into damage that could leave the ship helpless. Most critically, the hull planking shows the subtle signs of movement and wear that indicate how the ship is responding to the stresses of ocean travel. The caulking between hull planks requires daily attention to prevent water intrusion that could sink the ship or ruin stored supplies. The oakum and pitch that seal the joints between planks is constantly working loose under the flexing that occurs when the ship encounters waves. Small leaks that seem insignificant can quickly expand into serious flooding if not addressed immediately, making the morning hull inspection one of your most important daily responsibilities. The ship's pumps, operated by rotating crews throughout each day, remove the water that inevitably penetrates even a well-maintained hull. The rhythmic sound of pump handles working becomes part of the ship's daily music, a reminder that staying afloat requires constant human effort. The amount of water pumped each day provides crucial information about the ship's condition. Increasing flow indicates hull problems that need immediate attention, while steady amounts suggest that normal maintenance is adequate. The management of fresh water represents one of your most critical responsibilities as captain. The ship carries water in massive oak barrels stored in the lowest part of the hull, where their weight provides ballast while keeping the precious liquid as cool as possible. But water storage in wooden containers creates problems that threaten crew health and survival. Barrels develop leaks that waste irreplaceable supplies. Water becomes contaminated with bacteria that cause illness and death. Most challenging of all, accurate calculation of water consumption rates determines whether the ship reaches its destination with adequate supplies or faces the deadly prospect of thirst at sea. Your water management system involves careful rationing that balances immediate crew needs against the uncertainty of voyage duration. Each man receives a daily ration measured in wooden cups that provide just enough liquid to maintain basic health, but never enough to satisfy thirst completely. Wine and small beer supplement water rations while providing calories and some protection against the diseases that flourish in contaminated water supplies. But alcoholic beverages create their own problems. Drunk sailors are dangerous sailors, and maintaining sobriety while providing necessary nutrition requires constant vigilance. The ship's food supplies present challenges that test your administrative skills daily. Preserved foods that seemed adequate when loaded at your last port deteriorate under conditions of heat, humidity, and vermin that characterize shipboard storage. Salt pork, the primary protein source for long voyages, develops rancidity that makes it barely edible while providing essential nutrition. Hardtack biscuits become infested with weevils that add protein while making meals disgusting. Even when preserved foods remain technically edible, their monotony and poor taste affect crew morale in ways that can influence the success of the entire voyage. The ship's cook, working with a primitive galley that represents a fire hazard in a wooden vessel, transforms basic ingredients into meals that provide nutrition while maintaining some semblance of palatability. His skills in stretching limited supplies and creating variety from monotonous ingredients help maintain crew morale during the psychological stress of extended ocean travel. But cooking aboard ship involves constant risk. Galley fires have destroyed vessels, and the smoke from cooking can reveal the ship's position to pirates or enemy vessels. The preparation of meals aboard ship requires coordination that involves the entire crew in food security. Men assigned to fishing duties supplement preserved foods with fresh protein when conditions permit, but fishing from a moving vessel requires skills and equipment that many sailors lack. Those responsible for maintaining livestock, chickens for eggs, a few pigs for fresh meat, work to keep animals alive in conditions that test their survival instincts. Even the collection and storage of rainwater during storms requires planning and execution that can provide crucial supplements to the ship's water supplies. Your navigation responsibilities represent perhaps the most intellectually demanding aspect of shipboard command. The techniques available to 16th-century navigators combine mathematical calculation with empirical observation in ways that require both technical knowledge and intuitive understanding of maritime conditions. The compass provides basic directional reference, but magnetic variation and the effects of ion cannons on compass accuracy require constant correction and cross-checking using other navigational methods. Celestial navigation, using the position of sun and stars to determine the ship's location, represents the cutting edge of 16th-century maritime technology. Your astrolabe and quadrant allow measurement of celestial angles that can be converted into latitude readings, but this process requires clear skies, steady hands, and mathematical calculations that must be performed accurately despite ship motion and fatigue. Even small errors in celestial observation or calculation can result in navigation mistakes that place the ship hundreds of miles from its intended position. The dead reckoning system that supplements celestial navigation involves tracking the ship's speed and direction over time to estimate position based on the previous known location. This process requires constant attention to wind conditions, current effects, and compass readings, but it provides navigation information when weather conditions prevent celestial observations. However, dead reckoning errors accumulate over time, making regular celestial fixes essential for accurate navigation on long voyages. Your charts, hand-copied from originals created by previous navigators, represent accumulating knowledge about coastlines, currents, and hazards that affect ship safety. But these charts contain inaccuracies and gaps that reflect the limited exploration of many ocean areas. Sailing into waters not well documented by previous voyagers requires constant attention to signs of shoal water, dangerous currents, and other hazards that could destroy the ship without warning. The management of wind and weather represents another crucial aspect of your command responsibilities. Reading weather signs, cloud formations, wind patterns, atmospheric pressure changes indicated by instrument readings, and physical sensations allows prediction of storm systems that could threaten the ship's survival. But weather prediction in the 16th century relies heavily on experience and intuition rather than scientific instruments, making it an art as much as a science. Storm preparation involves coordinating crew activities that transform the ship from a sailing vessel into a survival platform designed to withstand forces that could tear apart poorly managed vessels. Sails must be reduced or entirely removed to prevent wind damage that could leave the ship helpless. Loose items must be secured to prevent them from becoming projectiles that could injure crew members or damage essential equipment. Hatches must be battened down to prevent flooding while still allowing ventilation that keeps the crew from suffocating in the lower decks. Your experience surviving storms at sea has taught you that success depends as much on crew psychology as on technical preparation. Men who panic during heavy weather become dangers to themselves and others, while those who maintain discipline and focus can perform effectively even under conditions that test human endurance to its limits. Maintaining crew morale during extended storms requires leadership skills that balance authority with understanding, firmness with compassion. The storm that you sense building beyond the horizon promises to test every aspect of your ship's preparation and your crew's training. The subtle signs, changes in wind direction, the appearance of high clouds that indicate distant weather systems, the behavior of seabirds that suggests approaching atmospheric disturbance, combine to create a pattern you've learned to recognize and fear. During 15 years of ocean sailing, you climb the narrow ladder from your cabin to the main deck, where the pre-dawn air carries the scent of approaching weather. The wind has shifted 2 points to the southeast during the night, and the sea shows the long, rolling swells that announce distant storms. Your experienced eye reads these signs with the expertise of a physician diagnosing illness, recognizing symptoms that indicate the ship will face severe weather within the next 12 to 18 hours. The deck beneath your feet moves with the irregular rhythm that characterizes seas affected by multiple wave systems. The normal Atlantic swell from the northwest combines with the newer waves generated by the approaching storm, creating a confused sea state that makes the ship's motion unpredictable and uncomfortable. Your body automatically adjusts to these movements, but you notice several crew members showing signs of seasickness that will affect their effectiveness when the storm arrives. The rigging overhead creaks with the strain of supporting sails that must soon be reduced to prevent damage from increasing winds. The sound provides a constant reminder of the forces acting on the ship and the importance of proper sail management in preventing equipment failures that could prove catastrophic. Your trained ear can distinguish between normal working sounds and the stress indicators that suggest potential problems requiring immediate attention. Miguel Santos approaches from the forward watch station, his weathered face showing the concern of a man who has learned to read danger signs in ocean conditions. His 20-year partnership with you has created a communication system that relies as much on subtle cues as on spoken words, allowing rapid exchange of information essential for ship management. His presence on deck at this hour confirms your assessment that changing conditions require immediate attention and possible action. "Captain," he says, his voice carrying the respect that characterizes all interactions aboard a well-run vessel, "the glass has dropped 3 points since midnight, and the wind shows signs of backing further south." The men on watch report seeing lightning on the southern horizon around 2 bells. His report confirms your own observations while adding information that strengthens the case for immediate storm preparation. The barometer, one of the few scientific instruments available to 16th-century navigators, provides objective measurement of atmospheric pressure changes that correlate with weather developments. A falling barometer indicates approaching low-pressure systems that typically bring storms, while the rate of pressure change suggests storm intensity and arrival timing. The 3-point drop Santos reports indicates a significant weather system approaching at considerable speed. The wind backing, shifting counterclockwise, represents another reliable indicator of approaching storms in the North Atlantic. Combined with the pressure drop and distant lightning, these signs create a pattern that your experience interprets as a major storm system that will affect the ship within hours. The time available for preparation is limited, but experience has taught you that systematic preparation can mean the difference between riding out heavy weather safely and suffering damage that threatens the ship's survival. "Pass the word for all hands," you order, beginning the process that will transform your sleeping vessel into a storm-ready platform. "We'll begin taking in sail and preparing for heavy weather. Check the lashings on all movable gear, and have the carpenter examine the hull caulking. I want damage reports from all departments within the hour." The call for all hands brings the ship to life with the controlled urgency that characterizes well-trained crews facing known dangers. Men emerge from the cramped quarters where they've been sleeping in shifts, their movements showing the automatic responses developed through months of working together under stress. The ship's routine transforms from normal sailing procedures to the systematic preparation that could save everyone's life during the next 24 hours. The process of reducing sail begins with the topmost canvas, the topsails and to'gallants that provide driving power during normal weather but become liabilities when wind speeds increase beyond safe limits. The crew assigned to this work must climb the rigging to heights of 60 feet above the deck, working on foot ropes while the ship moves unpredictably in the confused seas. One missed handhold or moment of inattention could result in a fall that would mean certain death. Your position on the quarterdeck provides the best vantage point for monitoring crew activities while maintaining awareness of changing weather conditions. From here, you can observe the work of men aloft while watching the horizon for signs of approaching weather. The elevation also allows communication with crew members working throughout the ship, ensuring that preparation activities are coordinated and efficient. The crew working aloft moves with the practiced efficiency of men whose lives depend on seamanship skills perfected through years of experience. They understand that speed is essential for completing preparation before conditions deteriorate, but they also know that carelessness in the rigging means death. Their work represents a balance between urgency and caution that characterizes all survival activities aboard sailing vessels. Fernando Lopez supervises the sail handling from the deck, coordinating the efforts of men working in different parts of the rigging while ensuring that sail reduction proceeds systematically. His voice carries instructions that guide crew members through complex procedures while maintaining awareness of everyone's safety. The process requires timing and coordination that transforms individual sailors into a functioning organism focused on ship survival. The ship's bosun, Carlos Vega, oversees the securing of loose gear that could become dangerous projectiles during heavy weather. Cannons must be double-lashed to prevent them from breaking loose and crushing crew members or damaging the ship's structure. Water barrels, food supplies, and personal belongings must be secured to prevent damage and injury. Even small items like tools and eating utensils must be properly stowed to prevent them from becoming hazards when the ship rolls heavily in storm seas. The carpenter's examination of hull caulking reveals the subtle signs of movement and wear that occur constantly during ocean voyaging. The oakum and pitch that seal joints between hull planks shows areas where the ship's working has opened small gaps that could become serious leaks during storm conditions. His assessment determines whether immediate repairs are necessary or whether existing caulking will withstand the stresses of heavy weather. Juan Morales reports finding several seams that require attention before the storm arrives, confirming your decision to begin preparation early rather than waiting for weather conditions to deteriorate. His work involves applying fresh oakum and pitch to areas where the hull shows signs of working, ensuring that the ship's watertight integrity will withstand the pounding of storm seas. The process requires skill and experience to achieve repairs that will remain effective under extreme conditions. The gun crews, led by Giuseppe Bernadetti, prepare the artillery for storm conditions by ensuring that cannons are properly secured and that gunpowder remains dry despite increasing humidity. The process involves moving powder supplies to the most protected areas of the ship while checking the lashings that prevent guns from shifting during heavy rolls. A loose cannon during a storm could kill several men while creating structural damage that threatens the ship's survival. The passengers, awakened by the increased activity on deck, emerge from their cramped quarters with the bewildered expressions of people who lack understanding of maritime emergencies. Their presence during storm preparation creates additional complications, as their safety must be ensured while preventing them from interfering with essential crew activities. The management of passenger fears and expectations during emergencies requires diplomatic skills that balance truth-telling with morale maintenance. Your explanation to the passengers emphasizes the routine nature of storm preparation while acknowledging the seriousness of the approaching weather. We're taking precautions against heavy weather that appears to be developing, you tell them, your voice projecting confidence that helps calm their fears. Please remain in your quarters and ensure that your belongings are properly secured. The crew has extensive experience with such conditions, and we will inform you of any changes in the situation. The Franciscan missionaries respond to the storm threat with prayers that provide spiritual comfort to crew members while acknowledging the reality of dangers beyond human control. Their presence reminds everyone that survival often depends on factors beyond skill and preparation, adding a spiritual dimension to practical preparation activities. The combination of technical competence and religious faith characterizes the mentality that enables people to face mortal dangers with courage and determination. The Spanish colonists show varying degrees of fear and excitement as they contemplate their first major storm at sea. Some retreat to their quarters with obvious terror, while others remain on deck to observe the preparation activities with fascination. Their reactions provide insights into human psychology under stress while creating management challenges that require attention despite the urgency of storm preparation. The merchants and minor nobles struggle to maintain dignity while confronting their helplessness in the face of natural forces that care nothing for social status or wealth. Their usual influence and authority mean nothing when survival depends on seamanship skills and maritime experience they lack entirely. The storm preparation process forces them to acknowledge their dependence on men they normally consider social inferiors, creating psychological adjustments that are often difficult for people accustomed to controlling their environments. As the morning progresses and storm preparation continues, you monitor weather signs that indicate the approaching system's strength and timing. The barometer continues falling, suggesting that the storm will be more severe than initially estimated. The wind has backed another point to the south and shows signs of increasing speed. Most ominously, the horizon to the southeast shows the distinctive appearance of approaching heavy weather, a dark line that seems to rise from the ocean itself. The sea state continues deteriorating as wave systems from different directions create increasingly confused and uncomfortable motion. The ship's movement becomes more pronounced and irregular, making all work more difficult and dangerous. Several crew members show increasing signs of seasickness that will affect their effectiveness when conditions become more severe. The psychological stress of anticipating heavy weather adds to the physical challenges of working in deteriorating conditions. Your decision to order hot meals for the crew while cooking remains possible demonstrates the kind of leadership that builds confidence and maintains morale during threatening situations. The ship's cook works to prepare food that will provide energy and comfort before weather conditions make cooking impossible. The process requires coordination with storm preparation activities while ensuring that galley fires don't create additional hazards aboard a wooden vessel. The hot meal provides more than nutrition, it offers psychological comfort that helps crew members face the ordeal ahead with confidence and determination. The familiar ritual of eating together reinforces social bonds that will be crucial for maintaining cooperation during the stress of heavy weather. The warmth of hot food provides physical comfort that will be remembered during cold, wet hours when normal comfort is impossible. The final stages of storm preparation involve checking and double-checking every aspect of the ship's readiness for extreme conditions. All sails except the minimal canvas needed for maneuvering have been furled and secured. All loose gear has been lashed down or stowed in protected areas. The hull has been examined and repairs completed where necessary. Fresh water supplies have been secured and emergency rations prepared for distribution if normal food preparation becomes impossible. Your inspection of the crew's readiness reveals the professionalism and experience that characterize successful maritime operations. Each man understands his responsibilities during heavy weather and has prepared accordingly. Safety lines have been rigged to prevent crew members from being swept overboard during deck work. Emergency equipment has been checked and positioned for immediate use. Most importantly, the crew shows the calm determination that comes from confidence in their training and leadership. The storm arrives with the sudden intensity that characterizes severe weather systems in the North Atlantic. The wind increases from a moderate breeze to near gale force in less than an hour, while the sea transforms from uncomfortable swells to dangerous waves that threaten to overwhelm the ship's ability to ride safely. The first drops of rain arrive as scouts for the deluge that will soon make deck work dangerous and visibility nearly impossible. Your position on the quarterdeck becomes the ship's nerve center as conditions deteriorate rapidly. From here, you can monitor the ship's behavior in heavy seas while maintaining communication with crew members working throughout the vessel. The elevation provides the best available view of approaching wave systems, allowing you to time maneuvers that help the ship ride safely through dangerous seas. The ship's motion in storm seas tests the limits of human endurance and seamanship skills. She rises and falls with wave systems that dwarf her 120-foot length, while rolling heavily as confused seas attack from multiple directions. The motion makes all work dangerous and exhausting while creating psychological stress that affects judgment and coordination. Maintaining effectiveness under such conditions requires physical strength, mental discipline, and experience that takes years to develop. The sound of the storm dominates all other sensations as wind and wave create a cacophony that makes communication difficult despite close proximity. The howling of wind through the rigging combines with the crash of waves against the hull to produce noise levels that require shouting for basic communication. The constant sound creates psychological pressure that adds to the physical challenges of working in extreme conditions. The first serious wave to break over the bow sends hundreds of gallons of seawater cascading across the main deck, demonstrating the power of natural forces that could easily destroy human life and equipment. The water seeks every opening in the ship's structure, finding its way into storage areas and living spaces despite careful preparation. The crew's response to this initial assault sets the tone for their performance during the hours of heavy weather that lie ahead. Your orders during the early phases of the storm focus on maintaining the ship's position relative to the wave systems while preserving the structural integrity of rigging and hull. The helmsman, working in pairs to control the heavy steering apparatus, follow your guidance in timing course adjustments that help the ship ride through dangerous wave patterns. Their skill and strength determine whether the ship maintains safe position or allows herself to be placed in positions where breaking waves could cause catastrophic damage. The crew working the pumps reports increasing water flow as storm seas force entry through hull seams and deck openings despite careful preparation. The amount of water penetrating the ship remains within manageable limits, but the trend indicates that longer exposure to storm conditions could create serious flooding problems. The pump crews must maintain continuous operation to prevent water accumulation that could affect the ship's stability and safety. Fernando Lopez coordinates emergency repairs as storm conditions reveal weaknesses in rigging and equipment that weren't apparent during preparation. A backstay supporting the mainmast shows signs of dangerous stretching under wind loads that exceed normal operating parameters. His crew works to rig emergency support using spare rope while conditions allow deck work, understanding that mast failure during the storm could leave the ship helpless and vulnerable to destruction. The passengers, confined to their quarters as conditions deteriorate, experience the storm's psychological effects as their cramped spaces become prisons where they can only listen to the sounds of destruction and chaos above their heads. Their lack of useful activity during the emergency increases their fear and helplessness while creating additional burdens for crew members who must monitor their safety while handling essential ship operations. The Spanish colonists, many experiencing their first serious storm at sea, respond with varying degrees of fear and seasickness that make their quarters unpleasant and sometimes dangerous. Several become violently ill as the ship's motion exceeds their tolerance, creating sanitation problems that affect air quality and comfort in already difficult conditions. Their distress requires attention from crew members who could otherwise focus entirely on ship operations. The Franciscan missionaries provide spiritual leadership that helps both passengers and crew members cope with the psychological challenges of surviving forces beyond human control. Their prayers and presence offer comfort that complements the technical measures taken to ensure survival, demonstrating the importance of spiritual resources during extreme situations. Their calm acceptance of danger provides an example that helps others maintain composure under stress. As the storm reaches its peak intensity, the ship faces conditions that test the limits of 16th-century maritime technology and seamanship. Waves reaching 30 feet in height tower above the deck level, while wind speeds approach the maximum that rigging and sails can withstand. The ship's motion becomes so violent that working on deck requires safety lines and extreme caution to prevent crew members from being injured or swept overboard. Your command decisions during peak storm conditions require balancing multiple factors that could determine survival outcomes. Maintaining some sail area provides steering control that helps the ship avoid dangerous positions relative to wave systems, but excessive canvas could result in dismasting that would leave the vessel helpless. Running before the storm reduces stress on rigging and hull but could drive the ship toward dangerous coastlines or shoal waters. Heaving to, essentially stopping the ship's forward motion, provides the most comfortable motion but leaves the vessel vulnerable to being overwhelmed by breaking seas. The technique you choose, maintaining minimal sail while adjusting course to minimize stress from wave impacts, represents the accumulated wisdom of 15 years' experience in heavy weather. The ship maintains enough way to respond to helm commands while avoiding the extreme stresses that could cause structural failure. The course adjustments help time the ship's passage through wave systems to minimize the impact of breaking seas while maintaining progress toward your intended destination. The crew's performance during peak storm conditions demonstrates the value of training and experience in preparing for emergency situations. Each man understands his role and executes assigned tasks despite conditions that would overwhelm inexperienced sailors. The coordination and teamwork that characterize normal operations continues under extreme stress, enabling the ship to function effectively when survival depends on flawless execution of complex procedures. The helmsman, fighting to control steering gear that requires enormous strength to operate in heavy seas, demonstrate the physical demands that maritime survival places on human capabilities. Their work requires constant attention to wave patterns and wind conditions while maintaining the course adjustments that keep the ship in safe position relative to dangerous seas. The mental concentration required for effective helm work under extreme conditions tests human psychological limits while demanding physical strength that few land-based occupations require. Carlos Vega, monitoring rigging and equipment throughout the storm, reports problems and coordinates repairs that maintain the ship's operational capability despite extreme stresses. His inspection reveals chafing in critical rope work that could lead to failures if not addressed immediately. His crews work to wrap protective materials around areas where rigging contacts other equipment while rigging emergency replacements for components showing signs of impending failure. The ship's carpenter, Juan Morales, monitors hull integrity as storm seas test the structural limits of wooden construction. His inspection reveals working in hull planks that increases water penetration while identifying areas where the ship's flexing under wave loads creates potential weak points. His assessment provides crucial information for pump crew operations while identifying locations where emergency repairs might become necessary if conditions continue to deteriorate. Giuseppe Bernadetti oversees gun security as the ship's motion creates enormous stresses on cannon lashings that must prevent multi-ton weapons from breaking loose and causing catastrophic damage. His crews work systematically through the gun deck, checking each weapon's restraints while tightening lashings that show signs of stretching under the extreme forces generated by the ship's violent motion. A single loose cannon during such conditions could kill half a dozen men while punching holes through the ship's hull that would send her to the bottom within minutes. The storm's duration tests human endurance as much as ship construction, with extreme conditions continuing for 18 hours that feel like days to men working constantly to maintain safety and survival. Fatigue accumulates among crew members who must remain alert and effective despite physical exhaustion and psychological stress that would overwhelm less experienced sailors. The rotation of duties becomes crucial for maintaining operational effectiveness while preventing collapse from exhaustion among men whose skills are essential for survival. Your own endurance during the extended storm demonstrates the physical and mental demands that maritime command places on captains who must remain alert and decisive throughout emergencies that could last for days. Sleep becomes impossible as conditions require constant attention to weather changes, ship behavior, and crew effectiveness. Food consumption drops to whatever can be eaten quickly while maintaining watch responsibilities, and even basic hygiene becomes secondary to survival requirements. The psychological effects of prolonged exposure to life-threatening conditions begin affecting crew members as the storm continues beyond normal duration. Some men show signs of the exhaustion and despair that can lead to dangerous mistakes or complete breakdown of effectiveness. Others demonstrate the resilience and determination that separate successful sailors from those who cannot handle the demands of ocean survival. Your role as captain includes monitoring crew psychology while providing leadership that maintains morale and effectiveness under extreme stress. The gradual weakening of storm conditions comes so slowly that you almost miss the initial signs of improvement. The barometer begins rising almost imperceptibly, while wave patterns show subtle changes that indicate the storm system is moving away from the ship's position. Most importantly, the wind shows signs of veering, shifting clockwise, that typically indicates improving weather in North Atlantic storm systems. The process of assessing storm damage begins before conditions improve enough to permit normal operations, as you need information about the ship's condition to plan recovery activities. Initial reports indicate that the vessel has survived without major structural damage, though numerous minor problems require attention before normal sailing can resume. The rigging shows signs of wear and stretching that must be addressed, while several sails have suffered damage that affects their effectiveness. Fernando Lopez reports that the ship's boats, critical equipment for emergency evacuation and harbor operations, have suffered damage from waves that broke over the deck during peak storm conditions. One boat shows cracked planking that makes it unsuitable for use without repairs, while another has lost essential equipment that must be replaced before it can provide reliable service. The damage assessment process reveals the accumulated effects of extreme conditions on equipment designed to withstand normal maritime stresses. Juan Morales' inspection of hull integrity reveals that the ship has taken on more water than usual during the storm, though not enough to create immediate danger. Several hull seams show increased working that has opened gaps requiring fresh caulking, while some deck planking has shifted enough to allow water penetration that affects living conditions in crew quarters. His repair priorities focus on restoring watertight integrity while addressing structural issues that could become serious problems if not corrected promptly. The damage to rigging and sails requires systematic repair that will occupy crew members for days as they work to restore the ship's sailing capability to full effectiveness. Carlos Vega coordinates these efforts while prioritizing repairs that affect safety and operational capability. Some damage can be repaired using materials carried aboard for such purposes, while other problems require improvised solutions using whatever resources are available. The crew's response to post-storm damage reveals the resilience and adaptability that characterize successful maritime operations. Men who were exhausted by the ordeal of surviving extreme conditions rally to begin repair work that will restore their ship to safe operating condition. Their willingness to continue working despite fatigue demonstrates the dedication and professionalism that enable sailing vessels to complete successful voyages despite encountering severe challenges. The restoration of normal routines after surviving the storm provides psychological relief that helps crew members recover from the stress of prolonged emergency conditions. The return to regular watches, normal meals, and routine maintenance work creates stability and predictability that counteract the psychological effects of facing mortal danger for extended periods. The process of returning to normal operations represents a form of healing that enables continued effectiveness during the remainder of the voyage. Your own recovery from the storm's demands involves gradually resuming the full range of command responsibilities while processing the lessons learned during the emergency. The experience adds to your accumulated knowledge of storm survival while reinforcing the importance of preparation, training, and leadership during extreme conditions. Each successful survival of such challenges increases your confidence and capability as a maritime commander while adding to the reputation that determines future employment opportunities. The passengers' reactions to surviving their first major storm at sea range from relief and gratitude to renewed fear about the dangers they faced during ocean travel. Some express appreciation for the crew's skill and dedication in ensuring their survival, while others become more anxious about continuing the voyage. Their responses provide insights into human psychology under stress while creating ongoing management challenges that require diplomatic handling. The Spanish colonists, many of whom had romanticized notions about ocean travel before experiencing its realities, gain new appreciation for the skills and courage required for maritime survival. Their respect for the crew increases significantly as they understand the level of competence required to bring ships safely through dangerous conditions. This enhanced appreciation improves passenger-crew relationships while reducing some of the social tensions that often characterize long voyages. The Franciscan missionaries interpret their survival as divine intervention that validates their mission while acknowledging human agency in achieving safety through skill and preparation. Their prayers of thanksgiving provide spiritual closure to the storm experience while reinforcing the psychological resources that help people cope with continued exposure to danger. Their example encourages both crew and passengers to maintain hope and determination despite ongoing uncertainties. The storm's aftermath reveals changes in crew dynamics as men who demonstrated exceptional courage and skill during the emergency gain increased respect from their shipmates. Conversely, those who showed weakness or failed to perform effectively face subtle social pressure that encourages improved performance. The natural selection process that occurs during extreme conditions helps identify future leaders while reinforcing the standards of competence that maritime survival requires. As normal sailing conditions return and the ship resumes progress toward her destination, you reflect on the lessons learned during the storm while planning for the challenges that still lie ahead. The voyage is far from complete, and numerous dangers, storms, equipment failures, disease, hostile encounters could still threaten the ship's safety. The successful survival of one emergency provides confidence and experience that improve preparation for future challenges while reminding everyone that ocean survival requires constant vigilance and readiness. The daily routine that governs life aboard ship gradually returns to normal patterns, though with enhanced awareness of the preparedness required for emergency situations. Watch schedules resume their regular rotation, but with increased attention to weather monitoring and equipment inspection. Meals return to normal preparation and distribution, but with greater appreciation for the comfort and nutrition they provide. Even routine maintenance work takes on increased importance as crew members understand how equipment failures during emergencies could prove catastrophic. Your navigation responsibilities require careful attention to position fixing after the storm's effects on the ship's course and speed. Dead reckoning calculations must account for the drift and course changes that occurred during heavy weather when normal navigation procedures became impossible. Celestial observations, when weather permits, provide the accurate position information needed to correct accumulated errors and establish reliable course plotting for the remainder of the voyage. The ship's position after the storm indicates that the vessel has been driven somewhat off course, though not enough to require major changes in navigation planning. The delay caused by reduced speed during heavy weather affects arrival timing at your intended destination, requiring recalculation of supply consumption rates and possible modification of plans for reprovisioning. These adjustments demonstrate the complex logistical planning required for successful ocean voyaging when schedules remain subject to weather and other uncontrollable factors. The weeks following the storm settle into routines that balance necessary ship operations with recovery from the physical and psychological stresses of surviving extreme conditions. The The crew's daily work focuses on maintaining sailing efficiency while continuing repairs that restore full operational capability. Watches rotate regularly, but with enhanced attention to weather monitoring that could provide early warning of future severe conditions. The ship's social dynamics evolve as the shared experience of storm survival creates bonds between crew members while establishing clearer hierarchies based on demonstrated competence under stress. Men who showed leadership and courage during the emergency gain informal authority that supplements official rank structures. Those who proved reliable under extreme conditions receive increased responsibility and respect from shipmates who understand the value of dependability during life-threatening situations. Your relationship with the crew develops new dimensions as men who observed your leadership during the storm gain increased confidence in your command capabilities. The demonstration of skill and courage under extreme conditions enhances your authority while building the trust that enables effective command during future emergencies. The mutual respect that develops between officers and crew during shared survival experiences creates the foundation for continued cooperation throughout the voyage. The passengers' adaptation to shipboard life after surviving the storm shows varying degrees of acceptance and continued anxiety about ocean travel. Some develop greater appreciation for maritime skills while becoming more cooperative with ship operations that ensure their safety. Others remain fearful and demanding, requiring continued diplomatic management that balances their concerns with operational necessities. The ongoing challenge of passenger relations demonstrates the complexity of command responsibilities that extend beyond pure seamanship. The ship's approach to the halfway point of your transatlantic voyage brings both relief at progress made and awareness of challenges that remain ahead. The successful survival of major storms provides confidence in the vessel's seaworthiness and crew capability, but experience teaches that ocean voyages present continuous dangers that require constant vigilance. Disease, equipment failures, navigation errors, and hostile encounters could still threaten the expedition's success. The management of crew health becomes increasingly important as the voyage progresses and the effects of prolonged confinement, limited diet, and constant stress begin affecting physical condition. Several men show signs of scurvy from vitamin deficiency despite attempts to provide varied nutrition within the constraints of preserved food supplies. Others suffer from injuries sustained during storm operations that require ongoing medical attention using limited supplies and primitive treatment methods. Your role as ship's medical officer supplements navigation and command responsibilities with healthcare duties for which you have received no formal training. The treatment of injuries and illnesses relies on traditional remedies and practical experience gained during previous voyages. Herbal medicines, surgical procedures using basic instruments, and the management of infectious diseases represent additional challenges that test your resourcefulness and decision-making capabilities. The ship's medical supplies, carefully selected before departure but limited by space and preservation constraints, must be rationed to last the entire voyage while providing effective treatment for problems that arise. Alcoholic spirits serve multiple purposes as antiseptic, anesthetic, and general medicine, but their consumption must be balanced against maintaining crew sobriety. Bandages, surgical instruments, and herbal preparations represent precious resources that could determine survival outcomes for seriously injured or ill crew members. The social dynamics of medical treatment aboard ship reflect broader issues of authority, resource allocation, and group survival that characterize all aspects of maritime life. Decisions about medical priorities, whether to use limited supplies for crew members versus passengers, how to balance individual needs against group welfare, require judgment that goes beyond medical considerations to encompass command responsibilities and survival ethics. The psychological aspects of medical treatment become particularly important in confined spaces where illness and injury affect not just patients but the morale and effectiveness of everyone aboard. The management of crew fears about disease and injury requires leadership that balances honesty about risks with encouragement that maintains hope and determination. Your visible competence in handling medical emergencies contributes to overall confidence in leadership while demonstrating the breadth of capabilities required for successful command. The ship's encounter with other vessels during the mid-ocean phase of the voyage provides opportunities for communication, trade, and mutual assistance while creating potential threats that require careful evaluation and response. The sight of sails on the horizon triggers immediate assessment procedures that determine whether the approaching vessel represents friend, neutral party, or potential enemy requiring defensive preparations. The process of vessel identification relies on visual observation of ship design, sail configuration, and behavior patterns that provide clues about nationality, purpose, and likely intentions. Spanish vessels following established trade routes present opportunities for communication and possible assistance, while ships of unknown or hostile nations require defensive preparations that could escalate into combat situations. The ability to make accurate assessments quickly and take appropriate action determines whether encounters prove beneficial or dangerous. Your experience with ship identification draws on years of observing vessel characteristics that distinguish between different national designs and purposes. Spanish galleons show specific proportions and rigging arrangements that differentiate them from Portuguese carracks, English merchantmen, or French warships. Pirate vessels often display modifications that improve speed and maneuverability at the expense of cargo capacity, while military ships show the heavy construction and armament that indicate their combat purpose. The decision-making process for vessel encounters involves weighing multiple factors that could determine outcomes ranging from beneficial trade to mortal combat. Wind conditions affect the tactical situation by determining which vessel has maneuvering advantages. Relative positions influence whether engagement can be avoided if the other vessel proves hostile. Most critically, assessment of the other vessel's capabilities and intentions determines whether your ship should approach for communication, maintain distance for observation, or prepare for defensive action. The protocols for establishing communication with other vessels reflect both the opportunities and dangers inherent in ocean encounters between ships whose intentions remain unknown. Flag signals provide basic identification and communication capabilities, but these systems can be misused by hostile vessels attempting deception. Voice communication requires close approach that creates vulnerability if the other vessel proves unfriendly. The process of establishing peaceful contact requires careful balance between openness and defensive readiness. Your ship's encounter with a Portuguese caravel bound for Brazil provides welcome opportunity for communication with fellow mariners facing similar challenges of ocean survival. The exchange of information about weather conditions, navigation hazards, and port situations provides valuable intelligence that improves your own voyage planning. More importantly, the human contact breaks the psychological isolation of ocean travel while reinforcing the international community of mariners who share common experiences and challenges. The brief meeting allows exchange of letters and messages that connect your crew with the broader world beyond the ship's immediate survival concerns. News from Europe, information about colonial developments, and personal communications help maintain morale by reminding everyone that their voyage serves purposes beyond mere survival. The psychological benefits of such contact demonstrate the importance of human connection in maintaining effectiveness during extended isolation. The trading opportunities presented by the encounter allow both vessels to address supply shortages and equipment needs through exchange of materials that improve survival prospects. Your ship trades wine and preserved foods for navigation instruments and ship repair materials that the Portuguese vessel can spare. Such exchanges demonstrate the cooperation that characterizes maritime communities despite political differences between nations on land. The parting of the two vessels after several hours of beneficial interaction creates mixed emotions of gratitude for the assistance received and renewed awareness of isolation as the ships sail apart toward different destinations. The brief respite from solitary ocean travel makes the return to isolated navigation more psychologically challenging while providing renewed appreciation for the community and support that land-based life offers. The continuation of your voyage after the Portuguese encounter takes place against the backdrop of increasingly familiar navigation challenges as the ship approaches the shipping lanes that connect Europe with colonial territories. The increased likelihood of encountering other vessels creates both opportunities and dangers that require enhanced vigilance and preparation for various contingencies. The ship's water situation becomes critical as consumption calculations reveal that reserves may prove inadequate if the voyage duration extends beyond planned parameters due to weather delays or navigation errors. The careful rationing that has governed distribution throughout the voyage must be intensified to ensure that adequate supplies remain available for essential needs. The psychological pressure of water shortage affects crew morale while requiring leadership that maintains discipline without creating panic. Your decision to implement emergency water conservation measures demonstrates the kind of difficult leadership choices that Maritime Command requires during resource crises. Daily rations are reduced to levels that maintain basic health while extending supply duration, but the cuts create discomfort and dissatisfaction among crew and passengers who already face numerous hardships. The enforcement of rationing requires authority and explanation that help people understand the necessity while maintaining cooperation. The search for opportunities to supplement water supplies through rainwater collection, dew gathering, and other emergency techniques occupies significant crew attention while providing hope that the crisis can be resolved before reaching dangerous shortage levels. The rigging of canvas systems to collect rainwater requires planning and coordination that balances water collection with sailing efficiency. Even small amounts of additional water can extend supply duration while providing psychological relief that helps maintain morale. The crew's response to water rationing reveals individual character traits and social dynamics that affect group cohesion during stress. Some men accept reduced rations without complaint while maintaining effective work performance, demonstrating the discipline and cooperation that enable group survival under adverse conditions. Others become irritable and uncooperative, requiring careful management to prevent their dissatisfaction from affecting overall crew effectiveness. The passengers' reaction to water shortage creates additional management challenges as their lack of maritime experience makes them less understanding of the necessity for strict conservation measures. Some demand special consideration based on social status or health claims, while others panic about the possibility of dying from thirst. The diplomatic handling of passenger concerns requires explanations that provide reassurance without minimizing the seriousness of the situation. Your personal example during the water crisis establishes the leadership standard that influences crew and passenger behavior throughout the emergency. Your visible adherence to the same rationing that applies to everyone demonstrates fairness and shared sacrifice that builds respect and cooperation. Your calm confidence in the ship's ability to reach safety before supplies are exhausted provides the psychological anchor that prevents panic and maintains hope. The eventual sighting of land after weeks of ocean travel brings emotional responses that range from relief and joy to anxiety about the challenges of landfall navigation and port entry. The distant coastline represents safety and resupply opportunities, but it also presents navigation hazards and unknown political situations that could create new dangers. The transition from open ocean sailing to coastal navigation requires different skills and heightened attention to factors that don't affect deep water voyaging. The process of coastal approach involves systematic reduction of sail and speed while increasing vigilance for navigation hazards that could destroy the ship within sight of safety. Shoal waters, hidden rocks, and tidal currents create dangers that require local knowledge often unavailable to vessels approaching unfamiliar coastlines. The navigation techniques that served effectively during ocean travel must be supplemented with careful observation and cautious maneuvering that prioritize safety over speed. Your approach to the colonial port that represents your voyage's destination requires careful evaluation of harbor conditions, political situations, and commercial opportunities that will determine the expedition's ultimate success. The entrance to unfamiliar harbors presents navigation challenges that test seamanship skills while requiring assessment of local authorities and regulations that could affect the ship's reception. The sight of other vessels in the harbor provides information about trading opportunities and political conditions while demonstrating the international nature of colonial commerce. Spanish, Portuguese, and other European vessels indicate active trade that suggests commercial opportunities, while the presence of naval vessels might indicate political tensions that could affect civilian shipping. The assessment of harbor conditions helps determine appropriate procedures for entry and docking. The preparation for harbor entry involves systematic organization of crew responsibilities and passenger arrangements while ensuring that the ship presents proper appearance and documentation for official inspection. The crew's work focuses on cleaning and organizing the vessel while preparing for the complex procedures of docking and unloading. Passengers prepare for disembarkation while gathering belongings and preparing for transition to land-based life. Your responsibilities during harbor entry encompass navigation, crew management, passenger relations, and official communications with port authorities who control access to harbor facilities and commercial opportunities. The successful completion of these procedures determines whether months of ocean survival culminate in successful achievement of voyage objectives or end in complications that threaten crew welfare and commercial success. The process of mooring the ship safely in harbor represents the culmination of navigation skills and seamanship that have been tested throughout the voyage. The delicate maneuvering required to bring a large sailing vessel alongside a wharf without damage requires coordination between helmsmen, crew handling lines and sails, and longshoremen assisting from the dock. The successful completion of docking procedures marks the transition from maritime survival to land-based activities. The emotional impact of successful voyage completion affects everyone aboard differently as crew members, passengers, and officers process the experiences and relationships developed during months of shared survival at sea. The relief of reaching safety combines with pride in professional accomplishment and sadness at the dissolution of the temporary community that sustained everyone through the challenges of ocean travel. Your own feelings about completing another successful voyage mix professional satisfaction with awareness of the human costs and personal risks that maritime command requires. The survival of crew and passengers under your leadership represents achievement that enhances reputation and career prospects, but the constant stress and responsibility of command exact psychological and physical tolls that accumulate over years of ocean voyaging. The process of crew dismissal and passenger disembarkation involves administrative procedures and personal farewells that mark the end of relationships forged under conditions that create bonds unlike those formed in normal social circumstances. The men who work together to survive storms, equipment failures, and resource shortages separate to pursue individual objectives while carrying memories and knowledge gained through shared hardship. The unloading of cargo and supplies represents the commercial culmination of voyage planning and execution that began months earlier in Spanish ports. The condition of goods after ocean transport determines profitability while demonstrating the effectiveness of preservation and stowage techniques employed during the voyage. The settlement of accounts and distribution of profits provides tangible rewards for the risks and hardships endured during ocean travel. Your preparation for the return voyage begins immediately upon arrival as you assess the ship's condition, arrange for necessary repairs, and begin planning for the challenges of another ocean crossing. The experiences and lessons learned during the completed voyage inform decisions about crew selection, supply requirements, and route planning that could improve safety and success during future expeditions. The cycle of preparation, departure, survival, and arrival that characterizes maritime life in the 16th century represents humanity's ongoing effort to expand knowledge and commerce despite natural forces and technological limitations that make ocean travel extraordinarily dangerous. Your role as ship captain places you at the center of this great human adventure while requiring personal sacrifices and accepting risks that few people would willingly assume. The evening of your first night in port provides opportunity for reflection on the voyage just completed while anticipating the challenges that await during future expeditions. The solid ground beneath your feet feels strange after months of constant ship motion, while the sounds of port activity replace the familiar music of wind and wave that governed life aboard ship. The transition from sea to land represents both relief and preparation for the next phase of a maritime career that defines your identity and purpose. In the quiet of your temporary shore lodgings, as you update the ship's log with final entries documenting the voyage's successful completion, you understand that your life as a 16th century sea captain embodies the human qualities that enable extraordinary achievement despite seemingly impossible obstacles. The knowledge, courage, and determination required for maritime survival represent timeless human characteristics that continue to drive exploration and discovery in every age. The story of your voyage, the storms survived, the challenges overcome, the men brought safely home, adds another chapter to the great human narrative of adaptation and achievement that connects past and future through the accumulated wisdom of experience. Your brief existence as a ship captain represents just one thread in the vast tapestry of human exploration, but it contributes to the knowledge and courage that enable our species to push beyond familiar boundaries in pursuit of understanding and opportunity. As sleep finally comes in the unmoving bed of shore accommodations, you carry the satisfaction of another successful voyage while maintaining awareness that the sea will soon call again, demanding the skills and courage that define your chosen life. But tonight, in these precious hours of respite, your mind drifts to the deeper currents that have shaped your existence as a master mariner in an age when the ocean represents both humanity's greatest opportunity and its most terrifying adversary. The path that led you to maritime command began in the dusty streets of Sevilla, where as a boy of 12 you first glimpsed the massive hulls of treasure galleons returning from the Indies, their holds heavy with silver and their crews bearing the weathered faces of men who had sailed beyond the edge of the known world. The sight of those vessels, impossibly large and complex, sparked something in your young imagination that would eventually transform a merchant son into one of Spain's most capable sea captains. Your apprenticeship aboard the trading vessel San Miguel introduced you to the harsh realities that separate romantic notions of seafaring from its brutal truths. The first lesson came within hours of leaving Cadiz, when the ship encountered moderate swells that sent you and a dozen other landlubbers to the rail, retching violently while experienced sailors laughed at your misery. But Captain Hernando Vasquez, a man whose 40 years at sea had taught him to recognize potential in the most unlikely candidates, saw something in your determination to master the nausea and continue working despite physical distress. The education that followed encompassed far more than simple seamanship. It represented initiation into a brotherhood whose members shared knowledge accumulated through centuries of survival in the most unforgiving environment on Earth. You learned to read the subtle signs that distinguish safe winds from those that herald destruction, the particular quality of light that announces approaching storms, the behavior of seabirds that indicates weather changes, the feel of atmospheric pressure against your skin that warns of dangerous developments hours before instruments register their approach. The technical skills required for competent seamanship proved as complex as any scholarly discipline, demanding mathematical precision combined with intuitive understanding of forces that could never be completely controlled. Navigation required mastery of astronomical observation, spherical trigonometry, and dead reckoning calculations while maintaining awareness that small errors in any component could result in the ship's loss in unknown waters thousands of miles from the nearest land. Your first experience with celestial navigation revealed the profound connection between maritime survival and humanity's broader intellectual achievements. The astrolabe in your hands represented knowledge inherited from Greek mathematicians, refined by Islamic scholars, and adapted by Portuguese navigators who first learned to find their way across trackless oceans using star positions that had guided travelers since the beginning of human civilization. The ability to determine your ship's position by measuring the angle between polaris and the horizon connected you to an unbroken chain of human curiosity and innovation stretching back millennia. The apprenticeship years also taught harsh lessons about the social dynamics that govern life in the confined space of sailing vessels where men from different backgrounds must cooperate despite personal conflicts and cultural differences. You learned that maritime authority derives from demonstrated competence rather than social position, and that survival often depends on the ability of educated officers to work effectively with illiterate sailors whose practical knowledge exceeds anything taught in universities. The transition from apprentice to junior officer occurred gradually as your growing expertise earned recognition from men whose respect could not be purchased or inherited. Captain Vasquez began assigning you navigation responsibilities during routine passages, then trusted you with more complex calculations during challenging weather. Your ability to maintain accurate course plots while handling the additional duties of watch-standing and crew supervision demonstrated the kind of competence that separates future commanders from sailors who remain subordinates throughout their careers. The first command opportunity came unexpectedly when Captain Vasquez fell seriously ill during a voyage to the Canary Islands, leaving you as the most qualified officer aboard a vessel carrying valuable cargo and 37 souls whose survival depended on safe arrival at Las Palmas. The responsibility of independent command, even temporarily and in relatively familiar waters, revealed aspects of leadership that no amount of observation could have taught. The weight of final decision-making, the isolation that command creates even among trusted subordinates, and the constant awareness that mistakes could prove fatal, these psychological burdens prepared you for the greater challenges that would define your career. Your successful completion of that first command established your reputation as a mariner capable of handling responsibility under pressure while maintaining the technical competence that safe navigation requires. Word of your achievement reached influential merchants and ship owners who controlled the lucrative trade routes between Spain and her expanding colonial empire. Within 2 years, you received appointment as captain of your own vessel, a promotion that represented both professional triumph and acceptance of risks that would shadow every day of your remaining life. The responsibilities of independent command encompassed far more than ship handling and navigation, extending to commercial decisions that could determine the success or failure of trading expeditions representing enormous financial investments. Your role required understanding of colonial markets, currency exchange rates, and political conditions that affected trade relationships between distant territories. The captain who could navigate safely across dangerous waters but failed to maximize commercial opportunities would not receive future command assignments. The selection and management of crew members represented another complex aspect of command that required psychological insight combined with practical assessment of maritime skills. Your ship's effectiveness depended entirely on the competence and reliability of men whose backgrounds ranged from educated officers to illiterate sailors whose knowledge was purely empirical. The ability to forge these diverse individuals into an effective team while maintaining discipline necessary for survival required leadership skills that few land-based occupations demand. The years of successful command that followed established your reputation as a captain who could be trusted with valuable ships, precious cargoes, and human lives during voyages that tested the limits of 16th-century maritime technology. Each successful expedition added to your knowledge of ocean conditions, navigation techniques, and crew management while building the financial resources that provided some security against the uncertainties of a profession where death or disability could end careers without warning. But success also brought increased expectations and more challenging assignments that carried correspondingly greater risks. The expedition you have just completed, carrying colonists and supplies to newly established territories while returning with precious metals and exotic goods, represented the kind of complex voyage that required every aspect of your accumulated expertise. The storms encountered, the navigation challenges overcome, and the human problems resolved during the passage demonstrated why experienced captains command premium compensation for their services. The technical innovations that characterized your era's maritime development reflected humanity's gradual mastery of ocean navigation despite technological limitations that would seem primitive to later generations. The magnetic compass, though subject to variation and interference that required constant correction, provided directional reference that enabled navigation in conditions where celestial observation was impossible. The astrolabe and quadrant allowed accurate measurement of celestial angles that could be converted into position information using mathematical techniques refined through decades of practical application. The evolution of ship design during your career illustrated the ongoing tension between conflicting requirements that naval architects struggle to balance: cargo capacity versus speed, stability versus maneuverability, defensive armament versus available space for supplies and crew. The galleon design that characterized Spanish ocean-going vessels represented compromise solutions that sacrificed optimal performance in any single area to achieve acceptable capability across all essential functions. Your ship's construction incorporated innovations developed through trial and error by shipbuilders who learned from the failures of previous designs while adapting to changing requirements imposed by longer voyages, heavier armament, and larger crews. The hull shape that provided stability in heavy seas while maintaining reasonable speed through water. The rigging arrangement that balanced sail area against structural loads while providing the flexibility needed for handling various wind conditions. The internal layout that maximized cargo space while accommodating crew quarters, armament, and essential supplies. The preservation of food and water during extended voyages required techniques that pushed the limits of 16th-century knowledge of chemistry and biology. Salt preservation, the primary method for maintaining meat and fish during long passages, required understanding of the proper salt-to-meat ratios that prevented spoilage while remaining economically feasible. The preparation of hardtack biscuits involved baking techniques that removed moisture while maintaining nutritional value and reasonable palatability. Even the selection of wood for water barrels required knowledge of which timber species resisted rot while imparting minimal taste to stored liquids. The medical challenges that confronted ship's officers reflected the broader limitations of contemporary medical knowledge while demanding practical solutions to health problems that could affect crew effectiveness and survival. Scurvy, the vitamin deficiency disease that claimed more sailors' lives than storms and combat combined, remained poorly understood despite empirical observations that certain foods provided some protection. Your approach to maintaining crew health relied on traditional remedies and practical experience while acknowledging the frustrating reality that many conditions remained beyond effective treatment. The international nature of maritime trade during your era created opportunities for cultural exchange that broadened perspectives while generating conflicts that reflected the broader political tensions between European powers. Your crew's multinational composition, Spanish officers, Portuguese navigators, Italian gunners, and sailors from various nations, created a floating microcosm of European diversity that functioned effectively despite the nationalist prejudices that characterized land-based politics. The encounters with other vessels during ocean crossings provided windows into the broader maritime community that transcended national boundaries while reflecting the political realities that shaped international commerce. Portuguese traders, English privateers, French explorers, and Dutch merchants pursued their various objectives using similar technology and facing identical natural hazards that created bonds of mutual understanding despite official hostilities between their respective nations. The pirates who posed constant threats to merchant shipping represented the dark side of maritime enterprise, men who chose predation over productive commerce while demonstrating the same seamanship skills that enabled legitimate trade. Your encounters with such vessels required careful assessment of relative capabilities while maintaining readiness for combat that could determine whether your ship continued her voyage or became another victim of organized maritime crime. The slave trade that characterized much of Atlantic commerce during your era represented one of history's most tragic chapters while demonstrating humanity's capacity for reducing fellow humans to cargo status. Your participation in voyages that transported enslaved Africans to colonial markets created moral conflicts that you struggled to reconcile with religious beliefs that emphasized human dignity and Christian charity. The economic realities that made such trade profitable conflicted with ethical principles that questioned the morality of treating people as commercial commodities. The colonial territories that served as destinations for your voyages represented humanity's expansion into new environments that required adaptation of European knowledge and techniques to unfamiliar conditions. The Spanish settlements scattered across the Caribbean and South American coast struggled to establish sustainable communities while exploiting natural resources that could support both local populations and imperial taxation. Your role in this colonial enterprise connected you to historical forces that would reshape global civilization while creating conflicts that would influence international relations for centuries. The precious metals that constituted return cargo from colonial territories, silver from Potosi, gold from various mining operations, represented wealth that financed Spanish imperial ambitions while creating inflation that affected European economies. Your responsibility for transporting such valuable cargoes required security measures that protected against both criminal and political threats while ensuring that royal taxation was properly calculated and collected. The personal costs of maritime command accumulated over years of exposure to dangers that tested physical and psychological endurance beyond normal human limits. The isolation that command required, even among trusted subordinates, created loneliness that could only be understood by others who bore similar responsibilities. The constant awareness that decisions could determine life or death outcomes generated stress that affected health and relationships in ways that shortened many careers and lives. The financial rewards of successful command provided some compensation for professional risks while enabling accumulation of resources that offered security against the uncertainties of maritime employment. Your carefully invested earnings from successful voyages created income streams that could support family obligations while providing reserves for periods when employment opportunities remained scarce or unattractive. The relationships formed during years of maritime service created bonds that transcended normal friendship while connecting you to a brotherhood of men who shared unique experiences and challenges. Former crew members, fellow officers, and professional contacts scattered across European and colonial ports provided networks of mutual support that could prove invaluable during emergencies or career transitions. The knowledge accumulated through decades of ocean sailing represented intellectual capital that distinguished experienced commanders from merely competent navigators. Your understanding of weather patterns, ocean currents, and seasonal variations in various sailing areas provided expertise that could determine voyage success while enabling more accurate planning and preparation for future expeditions. The reputation established through consistent performance under challenging conditions created professional standing that attracted premium employment opportunities while providing some protection against the career-ending consequences of single failures. Your record of successful completions established credibility with investors and shipowners who entrusted valuable vessels and cargoes to captains whose competence had been proven through actual performance rather than theoretical knowledge. As you drift toward sleep in your comfortable shore accommodation, the gentle sounds of harbor activity replace the familiar music of wind and rigging that has provided the soundtrack for your adult life. The transition from sea to land always requires psychological adjustment as your body adapts to stationary surroundings while your mind processes the experiences and relationships developed during months of shared survival at sea. Tomorrow will bring administrative responsibilities that complete your current voyage while beginning preparations for future expeditions. Reports must be filed with colonial authorities documenting cargo delivery and passenger transport. Financial accounts require settlement with merchants and investors who provided expedition funding. Crew members need final payment and recommendation letters for future employment. The ship herself requires inspection and maintenance that will restore her to optimal condition for subsequent voyages. The cycle of departure and return, risk and safety, isolation and community that characterizes maritime existence reflects broader patterns of human experience while demonstrating the remarkable adaptability that enables our species to thrive in environments that seem designed to destroy us. Your life as a 16th-century sea captain embodies the courage and determination that drive human expansion into unknown territories despite dangers that would overwhelm less resilient beings. In the peaceful darkness of Harbor Rest, you understand that your existence has contributed to historical forces that will reshape human civilization in ways you can barely imagine. The trade routes you've helped establish will connect continents and cultures for centuries to come. The navigation techniques you've refined will guide future generations of mariners toward discoveries that will expand human knowledge and capability. Most importantly, the example of courage and competence you've provided will inspire others to accept challenges that push the boundaries of human achievement despite seemingly impossible obstacles. Your story as Captain Eduardo Mendoza represents just one thread in the vast tapestry of human exploration and adaptation, but it connects past achievements with future possibilities through the accumulated wisdom of experience and the timeless human qualities that enable extraordinary accomplishment. The legacy of your voyages lives on in the maps drawn, the knowledge gained, and the inspiration provided for those who will continue humanity's eternal journey toward understanding and mastery of the world around us.